Now, let's be clear. The only way to ensure that SNAP benefits are issued by November 1st is for the Trump administration to release the billions of dollars it has sitting in an account at USDA that Congress appropriated, Democrats and Republicans working together to appropriate, to use for this purpose. President Trump is choosing to inflict pain on American families by holding meals hostage. That's why I'm leading this legislation to ensure no child, parent, or veteran misses a meal because of the Republican shutdown. It also says that if states, tribal governments are in a position right now to actually fund SNAP programs, that they do get reimbursed, unlike what President Trump has been threatening them that they will not.
Reserving the right to object, let me just point out, if I might, that we are 29 days into a Democrat shutdown. And the senator from New Mexico was absolutely right. SNAP recipients shouldn't go without food. People should be getting paid in this country. And we've tried to do that 13 times. And you voted no 13 times. This isn't a political game. These are real people's lives that we're talking about. And you all have just figured out, 29 days in, that, oh, there might be some consequences. There are people who run out of money. Yeah, we're 29 days in. And they've done their best to make sure that a lot of these programs are funded. But at some point, the government runs out of money.
I rise today to ask my colleagues to pass my Keep SNAP and WIC Funded Act of 2025, which has the backing of the entire Democratic caucus, the Democratic members of this Senate. Now, we all know access to food is a human right. It's that simple. And we're all fortunate enough to live in the United States of America, a nation that's rich, it's abundant, a nation that's rich in agricultural tradition, can be abundant in harvest. Now, in a nation blessed with such abundance, allowing our fellow Americans to go hungry is sadly right now a policy decision. I would argue a political decision, not a financial necessity. Now, the Trump administration has yet again made the decision, made the choice to allow our fellow Americans to go hungry. Never in the history of the United States has SNAP been allowed to lapse like this. As a matter of fact, during President Trump's first term, Secretary Perdue, President Trump, they tapped this same fund to allow SNAP benefits to continue to roll. Now, President Trump says that the use of SNAP contingency funds is illegal. Well, here's the document that was taken down from the USDA website that was up just days ago. He decided to take this down, and now even the Speaker of the House is lying to the American people, saying that it's not allowed. President Trump found $40 billion in U.S. taxpayer dollars to send to his political allies in Argentina just last week. But when it comes to feeding our own people here in the United States of America, he refuses to act. Back home in New Mexico, 1 in 5 people rely on SNAP. They aren't strangers. They're neighbors, co-workers, friends, children, people I go to church with. They're the folks we say hello to at the grocery store or at a Little League game. President Trump's refusal to release SNAP funding doesn't just impact New Mexico. States like Louisiana, where Speaker Johnson is from, are facing the same crisis. Louisiana is third on the list of constituents that will be negatively impacted. Now, I've been fortunate enough to visit several food banks across New Mexico and meet with community members who are working around the clock to make sure neighbors have something to eat. To every one of our community members who have stepped up, I want to say thank you, not just across New Mexico, but across America. I am proud to represent a community that takes care of each other when times are tough. It shouldn't have to be this way. Since the creation of SNAP, there's never been a lapse. There's never been a lapse in SNAP funding during a government shutdown. The Trump administration has the authority and the funds to keep SNAP running during this shutdown. And don't take my word for it. Look at the USDA's own guidance that they removed from their website that justifies this. Any failure to do so right now falls squarely on the Trump administration and Republicans. We could vote on this today, on this bill or one that Senator Hawley's authored as well that has many Republican colleagues that are co-sponsors to prevent a hunger crisis. This pain does not need to happen. We cannot stand by and let our neighbors go hungry. So I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, and I appreciate everyone that's reached out to my office to have a conversation about this piece of legislation. I hope we can work together, we find a path forward. But I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to come together to pass this bill now, fund SNAP, fund WIC, before this hunger crisis hits our communities. So, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to immediate consideration of S 3071 introduced earlier today, that the bill be considered read 3 times and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President.
The Majority Leader.
Thank you. Reserving the right to object. 13 times people over here voted to fund SNAP. 13 times they voted to fund WIC. My aching back. Finally realized this thing has consequences. Well, you know what? What Democrats are doing here, they're making plans to keep the shutdown going. And they realize, all of a sudden, 29 days in, that this is a real consequence, real life pain for American families, something that results from their shutdown. So are they making plans to end the shutdown and reopen the government? Nope. They're going to propose a bill to fund food stamps during their shutdown. Mr. President, this request is a transparent admission that Democrats want to keep the shutdown for what? Another month? Longer? This bill is a cynical attempt to provide political cover for Democrats to allow them to carry on their government shutdown for the long term. Now, I'll point out, we did 13 short-term clean CRs when they had the majority and President Biden was in the White House. 13. They've now voted 13 times against a clean CR. I have no idea where you're coming from. The Democrat leader said that President Trump could end this with a stroke of his pen. And he's right. We passed that bill with a stroke of his pen, he'll sign it into law. And the government opens up. And SNAP beneficiaries, SNAP recipients get food assistance. But you know what else? TSA workers get paid. Air traffic controllers get paid. Border Patrol agents get paid. Troops get paid. These people here get paid who are working without pay. You want to extend that and keep that going? Give me a break. So the people who aren't going to get the benefit of what they're trying to do today, Mr. President, are all the other programs that are affected. Head Start, grants to law enforcement to fight fentanyl and hire more cops to protect communities. Rural development programs that are important in my state, Senator from New Mexico State, I assume as well, that support housing, utilities, infrastructure projects in rural communities. Small business loans, certain direct loan and emergency programs that farmers rely on. National Guard training, critical to our nation's military readiness. Veterans transition assistance as they come out of service. Veterans cemetery services. Right now, there are no headstones, memorial certificates, cemetery maintenance, programs that are at risk, rental and housing assistance, delays in processing FHA-insured loans, delays in aircraft inspections and maintenance for air traffic control equipment. People that are currently not getting paid. I mentioned some of them, but air traffic controllers, TSA officers, Capitol Police, the people who protect us in this building, NOAA employees who are tracking hurricanes and other potential weather disruptions, disasters, food inspectors, other food and drug safety officials, mine safety inspectors, people who don't have pay certainty right now, troops, Coast Guard, ICE, Border Patrol, federal law enforcement, federal federal wildland fighters, firefighters, extenders that have lapsed, telehealth and at-home care, community health centers, teaching health centers, special diabetes programs, payments for ambulances, hospital at-home services, other lapsed authorizations, CISA to prevent against cyber attacks, National Flood Insurance Program to prevent closure, on homes in flood zones. That's what you're leaving on the table. The bill at the desk takes care of all of it. Funds SNAP, funds WIC, and yes, with a stroke of the president's pen, he can sign it into law and everybody starts getting paid again. This has got to stop. Hostage taking. Now you want some political cover. How long is this going to go on? How much longer do you want to see it go on? Just out of curiosity. So you think this buys some time. You want the shutdown to go on for another month, and then we're going to have another people come down here and, well, let's carve this out or carve this out. Why don't we just open the government? I've never seen anything like this. I've been here a good amount of time. I've seen continuing resolutions and appropriations problems and funding fights and government shutdowns. I've been through a few. I've never seen anything like this. This just isn't done. You want to have a discussion about health care? Absolutely. Let's do it. Open the government, let's do it. President will sit down with Democrats next week if you want to talk about health care. That's not what this is about. So, Mr. President, we're not going to pick winners and losers. It's time to fund everybody that is experiencing the pain from this shutdown. The Democrats really want to fund SNAP and WIC. I have a bill for them, sitting right there at the desk. Clean, nonpartisan, CR to fund SNAP, WIC, and the entire government, and all the many programs and people that the Democrat SNAP bill completely ignores. Mr. President, Democrats have spent a month now, playing with people's livelihoods because the far left wing of their party won't let them accept a clean, nonpartisan CR. If they want to prevent damage from their shutdown, they can end the shutdown. The bill's right here at the desk. So, Mr. President, I ask that the senator from New Mexico modify his request so that the Senate can proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Does the senator so modify his request?
Mr. President,
The senator from New Mexico.
reserving the right to object. Mr. President, I respect the majority leader, the Republican leader. I see some of his staff in the room as well, people that I've worked with. They know when I work with them and when others don't. But I understand the words that were being used today to spin an argument as to why there should be justification for 40 million people to go hungry. You know, Mr. President, I get in trouble sometimes because I use language from that little farm that I still call home. But I've learned the rules of decorum on this Senate floor, so I won't use them today. But some of the lessons my father taught me early in my life, even after I was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, when he'd leave a shovel by the front door when I'd go home on a weekend, and he'd leave my rubber boots there to make sure I'd put them on, because we're going to go clean the barn. We raise cattle, we raise sheep, we raise all kinds of animals, and after those animals eat, they make something. Some of us use it to fertilize our land, some people call it manure. I won't refer to it as the language that I usually call it when I'm not on the Senate floor. I also taught it's important to tell people the truth and be honest with the American people. What the good leader left out when he was talking about the number of votes that Republicans voted on under a Democratic president, under a Democratic majority in the Senate and in the House, was that there was not a shutdown. We negotiated. People came to meetings. As a matter of fact, a lot of my Democratic constituents told me Democrats gave way too much to those Republicans when you were in the majority. Well, when you have to negotiate, when you hold power, when you're in the majority, you meet people. You pull them in. You know how, folks, you know where my office is. You all have heard me talk about the late Governor Bruce King, cattle farmer out in New Mexico. He used to tell us when people can't figure out what's going on, you lock them up in a barn and you don't let them out until they figure out how to get along. Well, if we don't got a barn, maybe they've got an office around here to sit some people. And there's a White House. It's easy to get in. There's a big hole in it. Invite some people over there to sit down. President Trump said not long ago that if there's a shutdown, it's up to presidents to bring people together to prevent it. And if there's a shutdown, it does not bode well for the President of the United States of America. He's absolutely right. It's not just a Democratic bill to fund SNAP that's on the floor today. There's a pending bill that has been introduced into the United States Senate that has 11 Republicans that are co-signers, including the Republican who authored it, a colleague out of Missouri. He does not want his folks to go hungry, and he's saying, enough of this nonsense. Let's have a bill on the floor. Give him a UC. If you don't want to give the Democratic bill a unanimous consent, give the Republican-authored bill the unanimous consent. I'm a co-sponsor of that one too, because I'm willing to work with folks. You all know that. You all know that. Look, days before Americans start receiving notices that healthcare premiums are about to skyrocket, as the Trump administration moves to cut off SNAP benefits, this dysfunction is what the American people have come to expect from Republican majorities in the Congress and the White House. And look, I appreciate my colleague saying the blame is on our side of the aisle. We're in the majority. Oh, not yet. Maybe soon. We're in the minority. With power comes responsibility. Republicans are in the majority in the Senate. Fact. Republicans are in the majority in the House of Representatives. Fact. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is a Republican. Fact. Cannot be refuted. They're in charge. The American people know that. So, Mr. President, just as a reminder, SNAP has never not been funded when there have been shutdowns in the past, including President Donald Trump's first term. And even under President Trump's second term, he tapped $1 billion of the $6 billion to pay for staff to administer SNAP. They did it. Now they want to take down policy from a website that says that they can justify doing this, showing the law. That's the nonsense. That's the garbage the American people are tired of, the political this, the political jostling, all of that. We got people that are going to go hungry. This has never happened before, y'all. There's a better way to do this. So, Mr. President, in response to the request from the majority leader, the Republican leader, on behalf of constituents from South Dakota, constituents from New Mexico that do not, so that I'm clear, sometimes people confuse my New Mexico accent, that do not want to see their health premiums double and triple and bankrupt them, and some people that can't afford to get insurance won't be as lucky as me, where I survived a stroke 3 years ago. By the way, this is what a stroke survivor looks like. If you get access to a doctor, you don't have to worry about going bankrupt because you can't pay the bills. This is what you can look like. You can get better. And in America, we should strive for that. So again, on behalf of constituents from South Dakota that do not want to see health premiums double and triple, on behalf of my New Mexico constituents that do not want to see health premiums double or triple, I will not modify my request.
The objection to the modification is heard.
Mr. President.
Is there an objection to the original request?
Mr. President,
The majority leader.
I regret the fact that the Senator from New Mexico and his Democrat colleagues are unwilling to modify his request to include keeping the government open. And I would say, rhetorical question to my colleague from New Mexico, if the government reopens, do SNAP beneficiaries get paid? Yeah, right? So do WIC beneficiaries. Veterans, low-income elderly people, people who need this assistance. It's not like you're doing anything here that isn't accomplished by reopening the government and paying everybody else. And you guys know that. There are a lot of people today who aren't getting paid. Last Friday, federal employees didn't get paid for the first time. Yesterday, air traffic controllers didn't get paid for the first time. And it only worsens over time. And so I would be more than willing, and have said this multiple times, as you all know, to sit down, get a group together, talk about health care. We think that Obamacare, and particularly the enhanced subsidies, are desperately in need of reform. There's no income cap. There's no asset test. People are making $500,000 to $600,000 a year and getting subsidies from the federal government for their health care. There are $0 premiums. There are millions of Americans who don't even know they have coverage. Because the way that program is structured, the payments go directly to the insurance companies. So insurance companies are out there auto-enrolling people and making bank. A lot of people don't even know that they have insurance coverage. So this program is desperately in need of reform. The waste, fraud, and abuse in this program is kind of gotten to an epic level, because if you look at what's happened since 2013 when the exchanges went online, insurance premiums in the individual marketplace on the exchanges have gone up 221%. I mean, you tell me any place else in the economy that goes up 221% in that amount of time. It's going up double digits every year. In the employer market, it would be 6 to 7%. So it's a program that's fundamentally in need of change and reform. It's unsustainable and it's unaffordable. And to give you an example of that, doing the very thing you're talking about, which is included in your bill, which was offered as an alternative to the Republican proposal, the clean Republican proposal that simply opens the government, the proposal included in your bill is a $400 billion item, cost to the taxpayers. And so we're willing to sit down and see, and I've said on behalf of the President as well, that he's willing to sit down and talk about how we can reform and make health care in this country more affordable and less inflationary. Because this program is inflationary. It's going up every year. Now, you all are going to blame the doing away with the Biden bonus payments in that legislation for the increase. But the fact of the matter is that'll be a very small part of that because of the way the program is structured in the first place. There is no incentive to constrain or control costs. So let's have that conversation. I've said that. We can sit down and do it. But as many of you have said, and there are quotes out there from all of you, in previous shutdowns or when there's fights over a continuing resolution, that you can't negotiate when you have a gun to your head. The Democrat leader said that. And so let's just let's get beyond this silliness and fund the government and make sure that SNAP recipients and WIC recipients and recipients of other government programs, which I mentioned, and it's a long list, which isn't covered by your bill, by the way, that those people and those programs also get taken care of. We have a chance to do that. And we actually have a chance, I think, to have a normal appropriations process where we move bills across the floor, open them up to the amendment process, something that hasn't been done here in a while. We can do that. I want to start now. But it starts when we open up the government. So let's just do what normal people would do. And Senator from New Mexico's right. I represent a lot of hardworking Americans, farmers, ranchers, small business people, school teachers, educators. My dad and mom were educators. And I just think that there are a lot of people out there who look at this and say, this doesn't make any sense to me. If they want to talk about health care, then let's do that. But why take the federal government hostage? And every federal employee, including everybody in this room that's not getting paid, that isn't covered by the bill that you're putting forward. The bill that does cover everybody is the one right there, which we've now voted on 13 times. Just a few of you decide to vote differently. Let's get on appropriations bills, start funding the government the old-fashioned way. I'm for that. I think everybody over here is up for that. I know the chair of our appropriations committee, Susan Collins, and most of the appropriators on the committee have worked together in a constructive way, in a bipartisan way, to get bills to the floor that we can consider. But so far, everything we've tried to do here, at least in the last few weeks, have been blocked, including get on the defense appropriations bill and go into conference on 3 bills we've already passed. So, Mr. President, as much as I appreciate what the senator from New Mexico is trying to do here, and I don't question his intentions, I think he is sincere, but I also think that this is missing the larger point here, and that is this government is closed. And what you're trying to do and accomplish here is make it harder, not easier, to get the government opened up again and to make sure everybody else gets paid. So, Mr. President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President.
The senator from Washington.
The senator from New Mexico for coming out here and making it very clear who we are fighting for. And it really is Americans across this country who are seeing their costs skyrocket across the board. And as Democrats, we want to make sure that, yes, they are paid, but they also have the ability to get their health care. I heard the majority leader just now say they're not going to operate with a gun to their head. I would say to the majority party that the gun to the head is to all these people who are opening up their health care notices this week and finding out that their costs are skyrocketing. Why? Because what the Republicans have said and just said again is that they want to talk about it. Talk about it is going to do absolutely nothing for those people who are getting those bills and those payments today. So I wanted to come to the floor today and talk about that. And I would say to my Republican colleagues, yeah, we all want to have bipartisan bills. We want to work on bipartisan appropriations. But what we have in front of us is a CR that is partisan, that says do it my way or the highway and do not discuss the priorities of the Democrats. When you are asking us for votes, when you are asking for Democratic votes, you can't just demand whatever you want and say, if you don't do it, then we're going to sit here, which is what the Republicans have done. I would ask the Republican leader, as I've done so many times, talk to the Democratic leader, bring the president in the room. I have been here many, many times when we have had to find a way out of a challenging situation. And you know who's always been at the table? The president, the majority leader, and the Speaker of the House, and the minority leaders on both sides of the aisle. And that has not happened yet. And that's why we are sitting where we are, where today my constituents who are hurting are saying to me, where are the Republicans and why are they not talking to you about how we solve this issue? The majority leader said, well, if there's problems with it, it's, covers everything. They could have done this months ago, and they say, oh, now we can open up government and we'll talk about it. What does talk about it to my constituents? Because, Mr. President, last week, window shopping for next year's health plans actually started in my home state. And this week, open enrollment begins nationwide. I am hearing from families in my state today who are panicked because while Republicans are refusing to act on this and just saying they're going to talk about it, their premiums, those families' premiums are going through the roof and their health care coverage is slipping out of reach. There are so many stories. I have talked with small business owners. I have talked to patients, and I've talked to parents, and I've lifted up their concerns here on the Senate floor. And I'm going to keep doing everything I can to shout out these stories from the rooftops, because right now Republicans are doing everything they can to ignore this and to say, deal with it later. And what is later? Well, later never comes. Why do I know that? Because we brought up this issue time and time again throughout the summer when the Republicans were giving away tax breaks to billionaires and saying this is an issue that is confronting us. And it was later then, it's later now, and later is way too late.